Hello and welcome to the Daily Aus. I'm Lucy Tassell.
I'm Billi FitzSimons.
The California fires earlier this year burned thousands of acres of land, destroyed homes and businesses, saw more than 100,000 people flee for shelter, and directly killed 31 people. Now, US authorities allege one man was responsible. In today's episode, we'll explain what we know about the man accused of starting the LA fires and the alleged involvement of ChatGPT.
Lucy, this story of the LA fires, I feel like it was the first big news story of 2025.
Yeah.
It happened early in January, and it's easy to forget, I guess, because we are on the other side of the world, just how big this was, how catastrophic it was.
Yeah.
I remember so many people were dying. It was massive news.
Yeah.
For anyone who perhaps has forgotten some of the details, do you want to just refresh our minds?
Yeah, absolutely. It was our first week back of full-time work here at the Daily Aus, kind of the second week of January. There were two major fires that developed around the same time and two smaller fires, but the two main fires were the Palisades fire and the Eaton fire. They were named after the areas that they burned. And as anyone who was on Australia's East Coast during the pre-COVID black summer would know, when you have a fire that big, even if it's just in one part of a city, it affects a huge area. So smoke was really blowing everywhere. A lot of it was blowing out to the ocean, but it sort of felt like something that was affecting, in my memory, the whole US West Coast. And by the 8th of January, local time, the neighborhoods of Altadena and the Pacific Palisades had effectively been wiped out by fire, like thousands of homes and businesses destroyed.
And I remember a big conversation at the time was what caused this, because what was confusing was that it was winter there. What did we know at the time about what had caused it?
Yeah, I think we think of fires as being exclusively a summer thing, particularly here in Australia. What was interesting for me to learn at the time was LA Mayor Karen Bass said the fires had been stoked by winds that are normal for that time of year. She said it came from a combination of, quote, hurricane force winds and extremely dry drought conditions. So there's a phenomenon in LA's cooler months. It's called the Santa Ana winds, and they blow in to LA from the desert in the east of the city out towards the ocean, increasing the risk of fires because it dries out vegetation. Sort of the same logic as what causes fire here, which is if you have a lot of very dry vegetation, that increases fire risk. It's just that tends to happen in Australia more in summer, particularly if it's an El Nino summer, if things are very dry. So on top of these kind of seasonal winter winds, they also had extreme drought, particularly in central and southern California, which is where Los Angeles is.
Okay, so we know that there were extremely dry conditions and that there were also these dangerous winds that exacerbated the possibility of a fire, and that eventuated in these extremely catastrophic fires.
Yeah.
But why we're talking about it today is because we have learned, or there is an allegation, that there was someone who potentially actually started the fires.
Hi there, my name's Emma. I'm the editor at the Daily Aus, just popping in to say hi and let you know that here at the Daily Aus, we are an independent media company who work to break down the news for young Aussies in a digestible and accessible way. If you like what you're watching and you like what we do, please hit the subscribe button. Now back to the video.
Yeah. So last week we got a press release from the US Department of Justice, aka the DOJ, saying authorities had arrested a man in the state of Florida, quote, alleging he maliciously started what became the Palisades fire.
Wow. And so what do we know about him?
We know that the accused is a 29-year-old man named Jonathan Rindenek. He was in California at the time. He's since been staying with family in Florida on the other side of the country. In December 2024 and January 2025, he was in California working as an Uber driver. And the DOJ's press release actually told us that authorities interviewed him for the first time at the end of January 2025. so only a couple of weeks after those fires, which tells us they've been working on this for a while. And I keep saying authorities because we're not specifically talking about police. So we've got the DOJ, which represents the people of the US in federal cases. Like you might hear a case called the People versus XYZ.
So that's criminal cases.
Yeah. So that's the same way that in Australia, because our head of state is King Charles, we would say the Crown versus XYZ. It would be represented as R if you've ever seen a legal listing. I'm digressing. We've got the DOJ, and we also have the US Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms and Explosives, aka ATF, involved in this case. And the main source that I'm using here is an affidavit filed by ATF Special Agent William Schrei, who's based in LA. And his affidavit says his responsibility includes identifying the origins and causes of fires. So you've got this kind of federal bureau, you've got this guy within it who's filed this affidavit of evidence that authorities say suggests Rindeneck was responsible.
And what kind of evidence do they have?
Yeah. So Schrei laid out a lot of evidence. It's argued the Palisades fire specifically was a, quote, holdover from a fire that Rindeneck allegedly intentionally started on New Year's Eve. It's alleged he dropped off some Uber passengers just before midnight and then drove up to the Pacific Palisades area, went up to the beginning of a walking trail and lit a fire. A nearby resident actually spotted the blaze and called emergency services. It's also alleged that Rindeneck was trying to call emergency services as he walked back to his car but couldn't get through.
To inform them.
Yes. It's alleged he fled the scene in his car but then drove back and watched firefighters fight it and recorded video on his phone. Although firefighters thought they had contained the fire, it's been suggested that it actually continued to burn underground through root networks before resurfacing and spreading due to heavy winds a few days later. Prosecutors say Rindeneck lied to authorities about his location in a police interview, claiming that he was at the bottom of a hiking trail when he saw the fire and tried to call 911. But they say they have geolocation data from his phone that they say puts him 9 meters from the fire when he first attempted to call emergency services. So this is all evidence that hasn't yet been tested in court.
It's just allegations at the moment.
It's just allegations. And Schrei's affidavit also includes a detail that allegedly Rindeneck had a ChatGPT generated image of a city on fire in his phone.
I have seen this around. So
Yes.
he asked ChatGPT to create an image of LA on fire.
Yes, he kind of described it as one side should have people burning and one side should be behind a wall that shows people laughing at the people burning.
Right.
Yes. And it's also alleged that in the early hours of January 1st, 2025, so after it's alleged he lit this fire, he allegedly, sorry, so many allegedlys, we just have to be careful. He entered a prompt to ChatGPT that said, quote, "Are you at fault if a fire is lit because of your cigarettes?" And the ChatGPT response was, yes.
Wow. I didn't realize how big of a role ChatGPT allegedly played in this.
That was a surprise to me too.
Yeah. Do we know what happens to Rindeneck now? I presume it now needs to go to trial.
Yeah, it needs to go to trial. He is being held in jail for the foreseeable future. We don't know when a trial will happen. We know that since authorities first interviewed him in late January, they've presumably been building their case all this time, but there's a lot of different factors that go into when something goes to trial. So his defense lawyers have to be briefed, the prosecution has to put their case together, you have to find availability for a judge to hear a trial. I assume they'll be finding a jury. There's all these different kind of stages that need to happen. So I would imagine it would be next year, but it may even be the year after.
Legal processes do tend to take a long time.
Yes.
Before we go, what has the reaction been to this news?
Yeah. So after authorities announced that they had arrested and charged him, acting federal attorney Bill Assaili alleged Rindeneck's, quote, recklessness had caused the fire, resulting in, quote, death and widespread destruction. He said, while we cannot bring back what victims lost, we hope this criminal case brings some measure of justice to those affected. And then California Governor Gavin Newsom said the arrest was a step closer to, quote, uncovering how the horrific Palisades fire began and bringing closure to the thousands of Californians whose lives were upended. I think that's kind of a good note to end on, is to think about the fact that there's thousands of people who lost their homes less than a year ago.
Yeah, and they're still rebuilding, you know, their lives, their homes, everything.
Yeah.
Lucy, thank you so much for explaining.
Thanks, Billi.
And thank you so much for listening to this episode of The Daily Aus. We'll be back as always this afternoon with your evening headlines, but until then, have a great day.